Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. I have my, ignore my lipstick, Amalfi mug that I got in Amalfi, Italy. Super fun. So today's video is going to be my March reading wrap up. So we're just going to be looking at all of the books that I read in March 2022. I think this was a pretty good reading month for me. I had a lot of 4 or 5-star book reviews, which is great. I did have one flop, and actually 3 of these books I've already posted reviews for, so I'm not going to get into those books very much, but I will give you a rundown of everything I read this month. So the first book that I read was Gallant by V.E. Schwab. This came out on March 1st, I believe. If not, it was like the first week of March, and I was able to listen to it, and it was so fun to listen to, and it was really good. It was just a really good read. It was really dark and eerie and gloomy and kind of gothic feeling. I did not say this in my review, but death is a character, and I apologize if that spoils anything for you, but the way it was written was really interesting, and I really liked how that character was done. It was kind of creepy, and it was just really enjoyable. And if you want to hear a lot more of my thoughts on this book, just go check that review. I can link it down below. But I've continually been impressed and a fan of V.E. Schwab's writing, and I feel like even if I'm not interested in the story off the get-go, like from the synopsis, I'll still read her books and still kind of fall in love with them. So she just has a way with writing that is so beautiful and can make these stories much more intricate than you would originally anticipate. And also the way she executes the ideas is just excellent. And so I would highly recommend this book if you are a fan of her writing or if this premise sounds interesting to you. It was really good and I really enjoyed it and glad I got a fancy edition of it. I don't know if I said this, but I gave Gallant 4 stars. So this is the first one I read. Another one I read that, again, I'm not going to get into that much because I have a whole separate review for it, is Only a Monster by Vanessa Lynn. This was the January Fairy Loot book. So Only a Monster by Vanessa Lynn, I really enjoyed. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It has a lot of time travel aspects and magic and monster society and other monster huntress societies underlining the story and how there's a lot of different elements of that going on. And also kind of the lengths you're willing to go to protect your family and kind of deciding what the greater good looks like and how you execute that, because somebody's going to get hurt on one side or the other. So it's kind of interesting that the moral dilemmas and the different choices they have to face in this. It was I would say it was pretty high stakes and fast paced. It was an enjoyable read. I liked it a lot. There was a couple of issues that I had with it, but I addressed those in my review. So if you want more in-depth thoughts about that, go to that link down below. But overall, it was really enjoyable and I can't wait to see where the trilogy goes. The next book that I'll touch on, because I also did a review of this book, and it's actually in the same video where I did my review of Only a Monster, and that is Shadows of Kiev by Eliza Tilton. I did not like this book. I thought I would really enjoy it. I thought it would be something where the premise was just really interesting to me, and I thought I would have enjoyment out of it, even if it wasn't like the best book I've ever read, or the best writing, or the best prose, whatever. But I thought, I will enjoy this. I was really disappointed in it. I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. The only reason this book was tolerable was because of a side character, Cole, who was a leshy, which is a mythical creature, and I thought he was really interesting and funny, but even he was not enough for this book to get a better rating. So I was really disappointed in this. It is an indie author, and I'm sure she will improve over time, but I just felt like the writing was kind of stilted. The storylines and the arcs didn't flow well, and there was a lot of pacing issues, so I just wasn't a big fan. I would say if the story premise is at all interesting to you and you don't care about those things, like you just want like a fun read and you don't get really hung up on a lot of the details about if the story is believable or paced incorrectly, like if you don't have issues with that and you just like to read for reading's sake, then maybe you'll enjoy this. I know that there's other people that have reviewed this book and really enjoyed it, so give it a shot if you feel like it's for you, but it was not for me. I did say though that if she wrote a book 2 about Cole, I will read it. The next book that I finished in March was Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. I finally did it. I finally read Shadow of the Gods and finished it. I really enjoyed it. I really did. However, I will say I really struggled on how to rate this book because it was really, really good, but it wasn't exactly what I was expecting it to be. I did end up giving it 5 stars, so obviously it was really, really good and great. However, I will say it would not have gotten 5 stars if a certain creature had not showed up towards the end of the book, because John Gwynne, if you had teased that and it didn't come true, 1 star is knocked right off for you. I did think it was a little slow at times, but not because nothing was happening. It's more so because of it's building the world and you're building the perspectives and the backstories of these 3 separate characters that you're following, because this is a 3 POV story. So obviously you're getting the backgrounds of them, you're getting their different story arcs, you're getting the world in general. So I really want to read the second book to see how it kind of pulls all of that together more and how the plot goes with all of the groundwork that's been laid. So I think the second book will be a lot more, I don't want to say a lot more interesting because I thought this book was really good, but I just feel like there's going to be more happening because of so much that was built up. Maybe that was something that was building and still sort of a mystery, and that's why I don't know how to rate it, and I was struggling how to rate it. And I sit there and ask myself, like, what was the plot? And if I was to tell you, it's really difficult to describe this book because I don't think I could tell you the plot if I tried, because it's just kind of intricate and building, and I feel like I would have to spoil the entire book to explain the plot to you. But I do think there will be more of the plot in the next book, and that's kind of why I'm curious to get to it. I will say the combat in this is amazing. And that's kind of what I heard about John Gwynne before I picked this up, is that he writes combat superbly, and I agree. I think you can really picture it and visualize what's happening, and sometimes that's more difficult for me when I'm getting like a fight scene, because things that are being described like don't make sense in my head, and then it kind of interrupts my reading because I'm trying to picture it and piece it together. And I feel like this flowed so easily that I could just picture the fight scenes and the battles, and that was so cool. I loved it. I love the way he writes combat. It is so good. It was just really vivid and easy for me to picture, unlike other battle scenes I've read in the past. I also really loved the way he wrote Orca and Elvar's characters. I loved them so much. They're such great characters, and they have like different motivations, but they're also like just super tough and fierce ladies, and I just loved reading about them. It was so cool. It was so good, despite what I said about it being vague and kind of building a lot of things. It was so good. However, if I never hear another sentence about troll testicles, it will be too soon. Why? Why do I need to know? Why do I need to know about them? Leave them out of your writing. I don't want to know. I don't care. Don't describe them to me. Do not. I just don't see the point of that. It really irritated me. And that was kind of the only part of the book that really grated on me. But I was just like, this is unnecessary and I don't want to read about it. But other than that, it was great. 5 stars. The next book that I was able to read in March was Gods and Monsters by Shelby Mehurin. I can't really tell you about this book without spoiling it, but you're following a witch and a witch hunter who are forced to get married, and he does not know that she's a witch. This is the last book in the Serpent and Dove trilogy, and I've been meaning to get to this for a while, so I'm glad that when Legend picked my TBR that I was forced to read this and finish out the trilogy. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars because I did like this book a lot more than book 2, Blood and Honey, but book 1 is still my favorite in the trilogy, and so I feel like when you're just going downhill from the first one, it's kind of hard to love the series as a whole, and you just kind of like are attached to one of the books, and in my case it was the first one. There was a lot happening in this book, but there was several tropes that were going on that I'm just not a big fan of because I don't enjoy those tropes particularly, so that kind of took away from my enjoyment of it. There was a lot happening in this book, but there were several tropes in here that I am not a big fan of and I just don't really enjoy reading about, and so I feel like that dampened a lot of my enjoyment for this book. However, Beau was absolutely hilarious in this book, like exceptionally hilarious in this book particularly, because he's kind of funny in the other ones, but in this one he just really shined. I just found myself smiling and laughing at a lot of his dialogue in the book, and that's always enjoyable and fun. I feel like it did its best to kind of wrap up the story and trilogy as a whole, and for the most part it did, but for some reason there's just a part of it that feels lacking to me. And I can't really explain why, except it felt like the last 2 books, including this one, that there was just a lot of filler, and then it just felt like it was the end. So it was like filler, 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 resolution, the end. And I don't know why, but that kind of irritated me. And as I just said, I felt like something was lacking. So like you're going through the story, and there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's not fulfilling. And so you're just kind of trudging through monotony, even though stuff's happening. Like some of the other side relationships weren't developed enough, or there wasn't enough detail about the side stories and plots. So it was okay. I gave it 3 stars. So overall, this series was all right. It was all right. but the first book kind of still holds my heart. The next book that I read was Night World by L.J. Smith. And this used to be titled Secret Vampire. When she did these like anniversary editions, she changed the names of them. So this is book 1 in the Night World series. For this book, you're following Poppy, and Poppy finds out that on the first day of summer vacation, she is going to die. And so she has a terminal illness, and her best friend that she's had for years, James, has a secret, and he offers to turn her into a vampire so she will not die. And the story kind of goes from there, but this is the same author as The Vampire Diaries, and I was just really curious to read another one of her works because I really enjoyed The Vampire Diaries when I read them, so I was curious to see how I would like her writing in another series. I gave this book 3 stars. It was enjoyable. I liked it. It's written in the 90s, so the 90s nostalgia vibes are everything. While reading this, I just found myself kind of smiling because it was so nostalgic to me, and I really appreciated all of the little things. But I think if you were to read it now and you didn't grow up in that time, you would think it's kind of cheesy, or you wouldn't like it, or you would think it's kind of weird. But I think for me, because I did grow up in that time and I know what they're talking about and I understand the different jargon and stuff, it made me really happy, even though it probably wouldn't be acceptable today. So it was just kind of fun and interesting. I was shocked to find out that this series follows a different story and character in every book. So it's not like a continual story, and I thought it was. It's not. I don't know if any of these characters are in the other 9 books, which I thought was really interesting. So they're all like standalones, but they're in the Night World series because it's all set in the Night World, which is like the secret other world in Earth. So like urban fantasy, there's humans, and then there's the Night World that live among humans. So I was kind of taken aback by that because I thought it was going to be a continual story, and it's not. But overall, it was enjoyable. It was fun. It wasn't anything super heavy or deep, but I liked it. It was a cute, fun little vampire story, and I liked it. I would say if you are a fan of Vampire Diaries, it's got a little bit of a different tone. But if you enjoy L.J. Smith's writing and you want to read more of her works and you like stories where each different story can stand on its own, I think you would like this series, and particularly this book, since this is the one I read out of the series. But I would check into the series if you're interested. The next book that I read was Artificial Condition by Martha Wells, and this is book 2 in the Murderbot Diaries. I did end up giving it 4 stars. I really liked this one. It was really enjoyable as well, but I loved the first one so much that I feel like this, while still being great, was not the same as the first one and my first experience with it. So I loved the first one more, but these are still so great and unique and just amazing. They always make me laugh, and it's really cool to see Murderbot like go off on occasion and just like go ham and go boss and like destroy all of these people, and you get to see what Murderbot is capable of, and it's nuts, but it's so cool. So I really enjoyed this series. I think it's great, and I will absolutely continue. For this one in particular, I think it was interesting because they kind of make a friend in another bot or machine, and that dynamic was really fun. And then they're on another adventure to save more humans. I like that it's always like kind of revolved around, so far, saving humans and us being just like idiots or brave, or however you want to say it. So still makes me laugh, still amazing. I can't wait to continue the series. The next book that I read was A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. This was not one that I was supposed to or planning on reading in March, but it just kind of happened where I had some time to finish another book and I got it for free on Libby. I had placed it on hold a while ago and the timing just aligned where I could get it on audiobook, and so I was able to listen to it. And I really liked it. It was really fun. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and it was really fun and easy to listen to and just like fly through. I really liked the disability rep, Gray as a character, and the twist on the Beauty and the Beast aspects. So if you don't know what this book is about, it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and you're following Harper, who has cerebral palsy, and she's in a modern day world, and so it's a portal fantasy where the prince in the portal world, every season, once the season is over, he turns into a monster and he like massacres people in his kingdom. and he wants to prevent this from happening, and the only way he will is if he finds somebody to love him. Like I said, I really liked Gray as a character and the disability rep. I get a little tired of Beauty and the Beast retellings just because I feel like that's one of the most popular retellings. So I get a little tired of seeing the same plot over and over again. And I always get a little annoyed when the Belle type character leaves and then comes back like too late and then regrets leaving and is like, oh, I never should have left. It's like, no duh, you never should have left, you dumb. So that part always kind of annoys me a little bit because it's like, I'm going to leave and everything will be fine, and then I'm going to come back and everything's ruined and I should never have left. It's like, yeah, we all knew you should never have left. It was obvious you should have never left. That's always kind of annoyed me about Beauty and the Beast and the Beauty and the Beast retellings. But I do think this retelling was really well done. And I think the aspects and how she took creative rights in a lot of different ways, like with the Enchantress and with the help or the magical castle, I really liked how she did that, and I thought it was pretty unique twist on a lot of the normal aspects of it. So overall, I think it was a really good retelling and a really good book. The way the book ends is really intriguing because I have no idea how this will be a series, and I feel like I say this all the time, but it's because there's certain times where I'm like, the plot could go a lot of different ways and I just don't know how it's gonna go. With this, it's like the story wrapped up because it's the Beauty and the Beast retelling, so you know how the story's gonna end, right? But then it gives you this plot point, and it makes me think that the characters in this book won't be in the other books, but I believe they are. And so it's just kind of interesting how it's gonna unfold and how she's gonna bring it all together. I know that the second book follows a different perspective than the first one, which I will be excited about because I believe it is Gray and I really enjoyed him as a character. But like, how is the story going to come together at the end of the third book? I don't know. But I also don't have like any of the plot points to reference in my head for the second book, so it's really hard to guess where a series would end up by then. So yeah, I don't know, but I'm curious. I will continue the series. This was a long time coming for me to read, and I'm glad I finally got to read it. The last book that I read in March was A Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. So this had been on my TBR for a long time, and I was glad that I finally got to read it. This is a pretty old YA fantasy, but it's basically following a princess who is supposed to marry a prince in another kingdom, and she doesn't want to, and so she kind of flees from the situation and goes into hiding, and she encounters two men, and one of them is the prince that she was supposed to marry, and one of them is an assassin sent to kill her, and you as the reader do not know which is which. And so that premise was always incredibly intriguing to me, and I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really good. I understand why there's some hype to this and why people really enjoy it. This is also the first book in the Remnant Chronicles trilogy, and I liked this book a lot. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I liked that the reader didn't know who was the assassin and who was the prince. However, I felt like there were enough clues to figure it out. Like, I felt like I, for the most part, had figured it out before you're supposed to figure it out. So I felt like that was a little bit ruined for me. But I also feel like because it's been implanted in your head that you don't know who's who, that you kind of second guess yourself even when you shouldn't. So I wish there had been a little bit more mystery to it or dragged on a little longer, but obviously that has to come to a head at some point, and it did in this book. Sorry if that's a spoiler, but you figure it out in this book. And it was still a really cool approach and what drew me to this trilogy in the first place. So I really appreciated that aspect of it. The story itself was good, but I feel like it spent a little while building to other bigger things that will come into play in the rest of the trilogy. So I feel like this was just kind of the escaping story and then the coming back to reality. But the rest of it and how it plays out with the other kingdoms isn't clear yet, but will probably be really good once it becomes clear. So this is really good, and I understand why people love it so much. I will definitely continue the trilogy and want to know how it wraps up all together. But yeah, if you've been putting this book off because you weren't sure about it, I would recommend you pick it up because it is really fun. So those were the 9 books that I read this month. I can't believe that I read 9 books. It kind of flew by, and I just had a really great reading month. I know some people read a lot more than me, and some people read a lot less than me, but I was pretty proud of my progress this month, and it was just really fun. I found myself just really enjoying my reading experience this month. So that was all the books that I read in March, and that is it for today's video. Please comment down below what you've thought of these books if you've read them. You know, I always love hearing your thoughts. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.